Hey, happy Tuesday evening. It's Bill Maharis coming to you live from, yes, Pressbox Overtime. Tonight, as my guest, as always, a young man that knows as much, if not more, about sports than I do, Chris Bonanno. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Well, I think we first have to address young man because I just turned 40 last week. So thank you
Well,
for that.
I saw that happy birthday. I think your birthday was the day after our show. So, yes, you are still a young man. There's not too many people. Don't tell Doug Cook this, but that's why I golf with him so that I'm not the oldest in my foursome. But last week, Chris and Doug and I talked about the college football playoff. Actually, I just saw it pop up. There was no change in the top six. And Doug and I are going to be on tomorrow night at 7. But I thought with the knowledge that Chris has with high school here in Brevard County and a little bit in River County as well, with the playoffs brackets that just came out this weekend, and I know everybody else has had their shows and stuff, I thought, you know what? Let's have a little show, talk about our 10 teams. 10 out of 16 teams made the playoffs. And I couldn't think of anybody better than Chris, who also writes for Hometown News.
Yes.
And got a couple articles coming on there. So, Chris, let's start with 1S. We've got Melbourne Central Catholic and Holy Trinity. So 2 teams in Brevard County are 2 private schools that play 11-man football. They don't start until next week because 1S only has 16 teams, where everybody else has 32. Give me some thoughts. Who do you like? What kind of matchups? I got the bracket here in front of me. Let's talk about MCC. They are hosting Halifax Academy. I think you saw what happened the last time they played.
I did. Now, here's the first thing about it before we get into anything else. I can't recall ever a time, and I know they had an idle week last week, so it's a little bit of cheating, but I can't recall a time ever in Brevard High School football where a team played in the first round of the playoffs, the team that they played the last game of the regular season. For MCC, you'll take it because it did not go well for Halifax Academy last time. To the point where I looked up and I said, that's a playoff team? I said, how about that? So MCC, I don't want to spoil it for anybody going. They're going to beat Halifax Academy. The clock, if you go and it's a 7 or 7:30 start, it might be over by about 8:45. It's going to be rough. And, how about the job down there that Nate Hooks and his coaching staff have done? There's been a lot. Like, you want to talk about coach of the year along the Space Coast? You could throw out a lot of candidates. I think Nate Hooks might be mine, just because of where they were last year compared to where they are now. Very, 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 very impressive. And they've got home field potentially in a rematch against Holy Trinity, should those 2 teams win. And wouldn't that be fun to see MCC Holy Trinity in a second round playoff matchup on Thanksgiving weekend? That sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, I think I just double checked. I wanted to make sure I had it right. MCC only won 2 games last year. They're 8-2 this year. So as you said, Coach Hooks has done a great job. And maybe this is for another show. Listen, we got Heritage Coach. We got Sands at O'Galley. We got Holmes at Titusville. And we've got a lot of guys. You might even say Coach Burt. We've got a lot of guys that, man, just did some stout jobs this year. And that might be
a lot of them. It would be tough, right? You mentioned some of them. I mean, Coach Sands, O'Galley. Who's going to argue with Titusville at 9-1?
Jeez.
I know it started out a little, obviously, with what happened, but Vieira going from 0-10 with those circumstances to 5-4, goes. I mean, look, they're amazing every year, but Ryan Schneider did a really good job. There's a lot of ways you can go with that one. Heritage, Coach Benson. Obviously, from no playoffs to 9-1. Just really, really, really impressive stuff. And so we had a lot of good coaching jobs this year. On the Space Coast, we're lucky, and there you see the banner there with MCC and Holy Trinity, and these are 2 teams that I think fit right into that. Especially, Holy Trinity didn't come from the same, last year, obviously, but MCC certainly did. I know we were talking about it initially. I expect both to win.
I do too.
Yeah, especially MCC is a foregone conclusion. Holy Trinity's got to make it break a sweat.
Right. And for those that, and let me pop up the screen real quick. For those that didn't know, So MCC had the week 11 off. The week before that, they did indeed play Halifax Academy. They beat them 56-0. So that's kind of what Chris and I are talking about. So, and again, I never coached football, but let me scroll down here a little bit so you can people can see. There they are down there at the bottom. So, you can think of the Halifax Academy coach, but you also got to think about Coach Hooks. All right, so we beat this team 56-0, running clock. We had last week off. We got this week off. So we've got 1, 2, 3 weeks to prepare. So, you've got to, first of all, the coach at Halifax got to talk those guys up. But I imagine Coach Hooks, you got to make sure their heads don't get this big. Anything can happen. I don't think anything else will, but I don't know. You got to keep their feet on the ground too.
I tell you what, it's a I don't want to say it's the most difficult. Well, let's go. We'll approach it from the Daytona Beach Halifax Academy side of it for a second. You want to talk about, hey, you've got 2 weeks of preparation, and then you're going to get the same team. That's tough to motivate your now. Hey, they can always say, 40 years from now, when they're telling their grandkids, hey, I made the playoffs. That's great.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's probably not going to end the way that they hope. But you know what? If nothing else, it's an extra 2 weeks of practice for that team.
Sure.
And that helps. And what you do, and I hate to go there, but I'm going to go there because it's not the same situation. But like, I was the coach at Cocoa Baseball, and we were, we had some games where we knew we were probably not going to win some games. But what you do is you measure. You don't necessarily measure yourself against the other team. You measure yourself against yourself. So if you go out there, they lost 56-0 last time. Let's say they go out. Let's say they score this time. Okay, that they'll feel like $1 million. So if nothing else, the expectation level, if I'm them, this is maybe where you put your gadget plays in, whatever. Let it all hang loose. You have absolutely nothing to lose. And so that's good. And for MCC, it's a challenge for them because this is going to be 3 straight weeks, assuming they do what we think they're going to do.
Right.
This will be 3 straight weeks where they have not been in a competitive game. They've had Halifax by Halifax.
Yeah,
they're then going to have to turn it out for what we think will be a very competitive game with Holy Trinity in the next round.
Right. Yeah, I think so. And I'm like you. I've done a little coaching, club coaching and stuff in baseball and little flag football, I think, in soccer, and then did a little bit of helped coach girls lacrosse at Satellite. And you're right. For some of those games, like if we lost the first half, okay, look, let's at least win the second half and let's just see what happens. Or like you just said, and my alma mater, Cocoa High School, you know what? Let's have less than 5 errors. Let's see if as a team we can bat 250. Again, you got to set those stepping stones. And you're exactly right. It's the old cliche where everybody used to say, well, anybody can coach the Yankees. Not really, because sometimes when you go into a position where that team is doing really well, there's a lot of pressure to keep it there versus, building it up. So, I'm looking at the schedule. They beat Halifax 56-0. The week before that, Cocoa Beach 38-0. And then the week before that, October 13th, Friday the 13th, they beat Holy Trinity 20-7. So I agree with you. In between, a month is 2 Holy Trinity games and not a lot in between. Just so people watching know, MCC is actually ranked 6th per the FHSAA. I didn't look at Max Preps this time. In 1S, 180th in the state. Halifax is actually 14th, but again, there's not a lot of teams, and they're all the way down to 277th. So I think we both agree with MCC at 8-2, Halifax 7-2. We move over to Holy Trinity, which is at the bottom there, and they are playing Trinity Christian. Let me get my thing back up here. Trinity Catholic. Holy Trinity as a 2nd seed, Trinity Catholic as a 3rd. Pretty close. Holy Trinity is 10th in 1S. Trinity Catholic is 11th. They're 231st in the state, 234th in the state. So again, ranking wise, Holy Trinity is at 7-3 and Trinity Catholic's at 3-7. again, and Chris, you know this too. That's when you start looking at who did they play. I remember when my son played at Rockledge. I think out of the 3 years he was on varsity, 2 years they went to the playoffs, both times as runners up. And they would go to the West Coast and just smack the district champion. I think one year was Tarpon Springs. I can't remember who the next year was. And then by the second round, they had some, I think they played Mainland one year in Gainesville East Side. So, they're close in rankings, but Holy Trinity is good. Again, I'm like you. I see them matching up on Thanksgiving weekend. And it could be a closer game. Again,
It
Holy
wasn't a
Trinity,
blowout last time.
No. Was it 20 to 7?
7, I think it was.
Right. Yeah. So I'm like you. I see them playing in a couple of weeks. The winner of that, if that all holds true, will play North Florida Christian, who is ranked 7th in 1S. So again, you got 6th, you got 7th, you got 10th. I think the winner of that matchup has a pretty good opportunity to at least get to, well, you got to remember, that's a semi. So they got one game, they play each other. That next game is a state semi. They win that game, they're going to Tallahassee. So I really think whoever wins that matchup has a really good opportunity to head to Tallahassee. So let's take a look at, we're going to skip over to 4S, mainly because it's the less number of teams right now we have to talk about.
That sounds fair.
Before we get into some of the brackets. Let's see.
We got Cocoa. Oh, well, yeah, we got Cocoa, Titusville, Palm Bay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then we got 4, and we'll talk about that. One thing that you and I were talking about before we went live. Let me find Heritage. Okay, there's Heritage right there, on this side here. So, the one team that didn't make it that I thought had an opportunity, and you and I talked about this before we came on, was Vieira. Because Vieira, like you say, they went 0-2, and they won 5 of their last 7, I believe.
They did. I mean, it was obviously a very difficult start to the season. Now, the one thing that we would acknowledge that came about as a result of that first game against South Fork. South Fork finished 4-6 on the year. We'll never know because of the hidden formula whether a win against South Fork would have been enough to get them in. I think I feel pretty comfortable in saying it would have gotten them in over Martin County, given how close, but that only gets them to 9th. Well, actually 8th, but Osceola was behind them. Would it have gotten them past the 7th seed, which I believe was New Smyrna, to get in? We'll just never know the answer to that. But here's what I do know. VR really, really improved as a program this year. From when you think about what they did last year, 0-10, and really wasn't a close 0-10 until that last game against Merritt Island, to what they did this year, giving Titusville, who you can debate between the 2nd and 4th best team on the Space Coast, and they gave them all they can handle. Really, really impressive. Offensively, they began to look like Vieira a little bit more. Defense maybe a little bit behind the offense, but overall, I think all things considered, and I mean all things considered, a pretty nice year there.
Yeah, I wanted to show this real quick, just so those that might be new to understanding the brackets and the rankings, it's kind of like March Madness. Just because you might be in the top 64 in the country doesn't mean you're going to make March Madness, because you're going to have either some conference champions that are ranked real low that are going to get in because of an automatic bid, or you're going to have somebody that beats that conference champion that might have a losing record, but they won the conference, so they get in, and the conference person that should have been champion gets in. So the same thing kind of happened here. So here is the final rankings of 4S, which is suburban. Here's Vieira right here, ranked 178th in the state, 33rd in 4S. Now, 32 teams make it. Again, there could be some teams that are below that ranking that won their district, so they get an automatic bid. And just like you said, Chris, right there, 2 spots behind them, there's Osceola. Osceola finished 4-6, but 3 of their 4 wins were against the other 3 in their district. So they finished 3-0 in the district. So they get in, and they might not have been the only one, but that's certainly one team that knocked Vieira out because they were ranked lower, but won their district. So again, hats off, like you said, to Vieira. They finished 33rd, but there were some teams below them that won their districts. And again, even I think you and I talked before when Rockledge played Osceola, they had a losing record. But again, when you go and beat them there, I don't care if they're 0-8, you've done a great deed. So again, I think Osceola plays the number one team. Let me get the bracket back up here real quick.
They play Treasure Coast. They do. They're the 8th seed. They're going to play Treasure Coast.
Yeah, Treasure Coast.
That's an interesting game. They actually played earlier this year. Treasure Coast won, but it was, I believe, a 2-score win for Treasure Coast. Osceola beat them twice last year. It is not a foregone conclusion that Treasure Coast wins that game. Do I think they'll win? Yeah, but it is not a foregone conclusion. Yeah. Osceola has struggled offensively this year. I will say, from my perspective, as we look at that bracket, I think the most interesting game involving a Brevard team in week 1 is Heritage versus Vero Beach, because I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't. Yeah. So Heritage is 9-1. What was it? Oviedo, right? And that was a game they could have very well won. Vero Beach is coming in at 8-2. Vero Beach is ranked 4th in 4S. Heritage is ranked 5th. So again, they're right there. Oh, I'm sorry, that's their seeds. Vero Beach is ranked 9th. Heritage is ranked 10th. Vero Beach is 50th in the state. Heritage is 57. So again, right there on paper, they are, and this is something I always get confusing about. The top team is the home team. So Heritage is playing at Vero. I think they got I looked at opponents. Heritage beat Central 29-7. Vero beat them 45-6. Heritage beat Centennial 23-0. They beat them 44-0. And they only lost to Treasure Coast 22-10. So Vero Beach is stout, but as you and I know, and you've been doing this for a long time as a reporter and somebody covering high school sports and football, I think Heritage, what did they had like, I think 4 or 5 shutouts. They held their opponents to an average of like 7 points a game. I think that's why Brevard teams do so well in the playoffs, is because we play a lot of stout teams here. So I'm like you. That's a coin toss. It might just come down to because I know I've been down to Vero Beach. They pack the people in that old stadium there. But I think Coach Benson and the Panthers, I think they're up for the challenge.
So yeah, so a few things there. Heritage, I feel like maybe other than Titusville is the team that's the most mysterious in Brevard, in that we don't know exactly what they are. I could make a case their best win is Merritt Island, which is, it's nice.
I didn't pick them to win that game, let alone win it the way they did. So
they did. Now we didn't see them play Titusville, O'Galley, Rockledge, Cocoa. No, so we didn't see that. Now Vero Beach lost the on a Saturday night the district championship game 22-10 to Treasure Coast a couple weeks ago. They would be motivated to get another shot at Treasure Coast because that was the if you consider the Treasure Coast as Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin County, Vero Beach versus Treasure Coast was the Treasure Coast game of the year. It was hyped up, and Vero was leading at half, but they lost. You're also right about the Vero home environment. The best environment you will see for high school football around. It is awesome. If you ever get a chance to go, go. I was confused too about the home field, so much so that I had to call my editor back and say, "Hey, whoops," because I wrote it initially like Heritage was at Vero Beach. I said, "No, Vero Beach is at Heritage." So that's interesting. Yeah. I would call it an offense versus defense, because traditionally Vero Beach is known for their balanced offense and a little bit more for their offense than their defense. It's certainly Heritage is going to bring the defense. You referenced it. I think it's got 17-14 written all over it, and I couldn't tell you who's going to win. In fact, I may be going and covering this one because we have that unique feel of Brevard and Indian River teams. So if I can get both papers in there, then I'm going to do it. So so that'll be interesting. It also feels like a bit of an unlucky draw for both teams. You get a 9-1 in a district championship season, and your reward is Vero Beach. Conversely, Vero Beach with that power ranking, they had a nice win over something of a resurgent Lake City Columbia team last week, 31-10. you know the name. They're maybe not quite what they used to be, but they're still
Right.
pretty good. So they have a win over Miami Northwestern, which was highly controversial. I think I'm not making this up. I think Northwestern had about 250 yards of penalties in that game. It was crazy.
Oof.
I may be even
Oof.
underdoing it. I have to remember the exact number, but they did beat Miami Northwestern. So that the fact that they did that should tell you the type of talent that they have. Now, the one thing about Vero Beach as well, perennial playoff underachievers. As
True.
great as they are, and
Right.
as generally unbeatable as they are at home, when it comes to the postseason, and this is
Yeah.
true not just for Vero, but for Treasure Coast teams in general, they get a little found out. We've seen that in the past with teams like Martin County. We'll get to talking about Jensen Beach here in a little bit, but
Right.
traditionally it doesn't go at. They come out with these gaudy records, and
Right.
sometimes it doesn't really live up to it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the rankings. So you got Treasure Coast at number 2, Vero Beach at number 9, Heritage at number 10, all in that same 14 bracket. I mean, and I get it. Listen, with high school, you don't want first round game to be traveling from, Vero to Newport Richie. I get all that. And it should never be that way for the first round. But man, you hate to see 3 teams in the top 10 after 2 weeks. 2 of them are going to be gone. I was looking up, Heritage has given up 65 points. So they average about 6.5 a game given up. Vero Beach giving up 110. I think that Heritage, that big win over Vieira, that I didn't expect a shutout as well as Vieira was playing. So, I think it's doable. It's going to be tough. But I think Heritage, has an opportunity. And again, like we talked about, the winner more than likely gets Treasure Coast. They beat Central during the year, Centennial, lost big to Cocoa, lost big to St. Thomas, and they beat Seminole. I think Seminole only lost 2 games this year. So they're either hot or they're cold. So I think the winner of this game has a good opportunity to maybe catch Treasure Coast, looking ahead. And I think our Panthers, I'm like you, 17-14, 20-17, 10-7. And I don't know if they're both running teams or not, but I have a gut feeling if somebody gets ahead early, I don't know if either team can play that catch up, if they get behind. So I'm like you, if you get to go down there, that might be a good one to watch. And that's the only team that we had playing in 4S. So let's take a look at, we're going to go to 2S because, and again, I'm an alumni. You coach baseball there. So I am a little bit.
I was a teacher there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Yeah. So I'm a little biased. I unless Coco stops
we
themselves,
probably don't need to spend
I
that
just
much
don't
time
know.
talking about this.
Yeah,
I mean, we can break this down all you want. The clock's going to run.
Yeah. The only thing I think in Eustis' favor, they beat Merritt Island last week.
They
I
did.
mean, that was a little surprise. I think it was 32-28. I mean, but they have a good record. Let me look at the details right here. I like clicking onto this. And for those of you real quick that might watch later, if you just go to FHSAA, click on sports, click on football, and then click on brackets, and you can just punch in 1S, 2S, whatever. You can click on rankings. Very easy to maneuver back and forth, just like I did. You click on details, and it talks about the 2 teams: Cocoa 9-1, Eustis 7-3. So again, very user friendly. Yeah, I see Cocoa getting past that. So let's scoot down to Titusville, who is the number 3 seed. Palm Bay is the number 6 seed. Let me look at my notes here. Titusville, and this is interesting. Titusville is actually ranked 9th in the classification, 48th in the state. Again, 2 years ago, they won 1 game, maybe, I think, or no games. And in 2 years, Coach Holmes has them at 9-1, ranked 8th in the class, 48th in the state. And Coach Burke back at Palm Bay at 7-3, ranked 15th in the class, 112th in the state. And back on September 15th, Titusville beat Palm Bay 16-10. So again, it is at Titusville. Home team is on the top. I think Titusville might be playing the better ball right now, but I don't know. Maybe next to that Heritage Vero Beach, this could be the most intriguing game too.
You could, so from a straight Brevard perspective, you could say you want to make the case that the inter-Brevard games were the most intriguing. I would give you that. It's intriguing for a few reasons. Number one, they just did this last year when they played twice. Except
Right.
last year it was Palm Bay winning both games.
Right.
This year, I would not put it past Palm Bay to win this game. It's also intriguing because Dan Burke is back on the sidelines. You don't know when it'll be, the last game for Dan Burke or whenever, but
Right.
it's good to see him back on the sidelines, obviously, and he's done a nice job, and I hope he stays a while because
Yeah.
he's done such a great job for so many years here in Brevard. The Titusville
And I'm not sure who's
defense
on his staff, if he's got somebody that, that he's getting ready to take over. But yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of an interesting clash versus one of the old guard coaches, a legendary coach, versus one of the new coaches that we think is doing such a great job here in John Holmes. It doesn't seem that long ago that John Holmes was on the playing field going up against Dan Burke's teams. But this one's interesting because Titusville, they're really stout defensively. The offense can be inconsistent, and we've seen them. 9-1 is quite honestly them winning a few close games, last week included.
Right.
I think this is going to be a 4-quarter game. It would not surprise me if Palm Bay won. If you force me to pick a team, you probably would give the nod to Titusville. And I personally don't put a lot of stock into home field in high school football, but it's better, I guess, than not to have it. But also they have that knowledge that they have beaten them earlier this season. But this will be a low-scoring 4-quarter game, and I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, Titusville got the right team up here. Palm Bay ended the season with a really good win over Satellite, another team we'll talk about shortly that made the playoffs, 35-21. Titusville, even though it was 35-28, I think that was a good win over Vieira. Astronaut, God bless them. I think they did finally win a game. I think they won their last game, which I'm glad. You hate to see anybody.
Their last game was against Titusville, but they did defeat Space Coast.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then at Space Coast, so I think we had, except for Bayside, I think everybody won at least a game. They played well against Cocoa. They beat a good Calvary Christian Academy. So I'm like you. I like them both. This by no means is a Titusville win. And I think going into the game with the Palm Bay I thought was a good win over Satellite, and then Titusville also going in with the win over Vieira. And then let me just take a quick look. I don't think, or do they go? Yeah, see, they're in a little different bracket. So they play South Sumter, the winner of that game, whoever wins, and Nature Coast Tech. And I was looking here real quick. I'm not sure if I wrote it down. Yeah, South Sumter is 9-1, fourth in the class. Nature Coast 8-2, 16th. So whoever wins this game, that's going to be a stout game round 2. And then if they can get past that, then they're going to play Cocoa in the third round. So I think we agree that Cocoa, unless something unforeseen happens that you and I don't know about, I think this is their champion. And again, not selling Palm Bay or Titusville because we have 2 other Brevard County teams in that class short. But that's going to be an interesting game. Hopefully it'll be a good crowd up there on both sides for that one. And again, 3 teams out of 1 district, 10% of the 32 teams are in the, 2S. All right. So the last one, the most teams that we have in one category, and I think you and I have actually talked about this before. I've been saying it probably back when I was, I don't want to say when I was a PA announcer, because back then it was the district champion and the district runner-up, and that was it. And I wasn't real keen when they changed the parameters, but I'll be honest with you, it's done nothing but benefit our teams. So
It
we just
has.
got finished talking about 2S, where we've got 3 teams. Well, now we're going to talk about 3S, and we've got 4 teams, and this would not happen before, that are making the playoffs. And I said this when they were, Class 5A? And I think even one time in 5A, we had 4 teams. There is no tougher. I mean, I'd have to research it. How many other districts have 4 teams? 4 out of 1/8 of this bracket is from Brevard County. And we've got Satellite, tough draw, number 1 Mainland, Rockledge against Jensen Beach. I'm going to let you talk about that when you know a little bit about Jensen Beach. And then we got O'Galley and Merritt Island again. What was that, 12-11 game, I believe, when they played the first time?
12-11 game, yes.
Yeah, so let's go up. Let's talk about Satellite. I'm glad, again, Coach Helton. And I go back to when Coach Kimmy took them to be independent. Sometimes that works when schools do that. Sometimes it doesn't. If you're going to do a blueprint, in my opinion, you're going to use Satellite High School, because they built the excitement up. They built the crowds up. I think my first year as the AD, I went over there. They're allowed to play that bowl game when you're the 11th. I want to say it was Father Lopez, but and then they come back into 5A, and I think they've made the playoffs pretty much since then. And here they make it again. So again, they got the excitement back beachside. They got the kids that stayed in the program. They got the fan base behind them, and going independent and coming back. I think that was a big success story to Coach Kimmy, who is now, as you and I know, the athletic director at Cocoa Beach. Mainland's pretty stout. I haven't seen them play. What are they, 9-1? I don't think they're 10-0. I don't believe.
No, they lost their last game 33-0 to Lake Mary.
Oh yeah. Well, Lake Mary.
Lake
I think
Mary's good, but
yeah, they've got actually, from my knowledge, the only quarterback ranked higher than the quarterback from Cocoa. He's also another sophomore, last name Grubbs. So I didn't look at the stats on that game. Maybe that's what happened, was that they ran into him. But so it's going to take I don't know. I think it's going to take a monster game for Satellite to up in Mainland. But that's why we play the game.
We do, and I'll say this for Satellite. They were the 8 seed last year, going up against the mighty 1 seed that no one thought they had a chance in. And quite frankly, they probably should have won that game. They were just about in field goal range. They got a penalty late to beat Rockledge. It pushed them out, and Rockledge was able to hold. But I'll tell you what, Satellite, for large stretches of that game, outplayed the number 1 seed Rockledge last year. Now, Mainland's really good. They've got a 5-star defensive tackle who just committed to the University of Florida. LJ McCray, I believe his name is. They were maybe not quite what they were last year, this year, but they've got that tradition. If you don't know, it's Derek Brooks, it's Vince Carter. This is a very good athletic school,
right?
And they're going to be tough. This is obviously a difficult thing, but let's first, as you said, let's give the nod to Satellite for making the playoffs to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah, they were the only, I think, besides Vero, they were the team I wasn't, because I hadn't really been following. I just figured I'll wait until the brackets come out. And you know what? Again, hats off to Coach Helton. He follows the Pressbox. Thank you, Coach. Great individual. We did his spring game about a year ago, Doug and I. But he's done a great job there. And I'm, like you say, you coached at Cocoa when you had a tough year at baseball. Listen, there's nothing to lose. Nobody thinks you're going to win.
There's nothing to lose.
Play loose. And I'm like you. I'm looking. Satellite's going to give a good effort, whatever happens.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And 2 things I want to point out. One, they were last year. It was either the clock ran or came real close to running against Rockledge in the regular season, and they came back and gave a much better showing in the playoffs there. Second thing, we talked, just going back to our Vieira thing. The reason why Satellite's in and Vieira's not is because Satellite staged that comeback against Vieira week 2 of the regular season.
Yeah.
Vieira was up. I want to say 27-14 at the half and lost, something like that.
I think Satellite, I think they ended up winning by 1 or something
I
like
want to
that.
say it ended up 28-27 or something like that. But Satellite came from behind and won they were down 2 scores at the half, came back and won. You don't see 2-score comebacks in high school football that often.
No.
And so that was very impressive. So again, full marks to Satellite. They could have easily beaten Merritt Island. They pushed Palm Bay last week. So no matter what the Scorps do up there, heck of a year for them. But of course, there's 3 other teams from that district should they to talk about as well.
And I believe, because Doug and I were talking about it today when we were out there enjoying this beautiful weather at Manatee Cove at Patrick Air Force Base playing a little golf. I think we were in the booth. I think I was covering for Coach Inman and he was my spotter. And you're right. That was a nail biter, that game. And so talking about Rockledge, they are the 5th seed at 5-5. Jensen Beach 9-1 as the 4th seed. Here's something interesting though. Let me see if I'm going to show this screen real quick. And
they are a very interesting team, Jensen Beach.
Yeah. Let me just show. And again, very easy to use this website. Let me see if I can change screens here. Let's see. I'm going to stop. And I'm going to, because this, I saw this and I had to look at it twice. And I think I'm reading it right. Let's see. This is football rankings. This should be 3S coming up. Yeah. So let's take a look here. Let me go back. Let's see. So Rockledge, I've got at 18th and they are 13th. So let me change the page here. All right. So here's Jensen Beach, 13th class ranking. Look at that strength of schedule. Negative 1.24.
Well, that's what we're talking about with respect to the Treasure Coast sometimes. That's
and you go down to Rockledge, ranked 18th, 9.09. So again, I guess Jensen Beach, did they win their district?
They did. They
all right, so that's why they're right. So that's why they're hosting. Right, because they won their district, because otherwise -1. So again, on paper, I've never been down to Jensen Beach. I don't know what kind of crowd they have as far as might be down there watching the game, but wow, you got to think Rockledge's got a real good chance to win that game.
So this is going to be, I'm not overstating this. This may be the first team to 10 points wins. I'm not even kidding with you on that. The first 4, Jensen Beach did not allow a point in their first 4 games of the season. They have thrown 6 shutouts, including their last one was against Bayside on October 26th. They are now they've allowed something. I think it's 50 something points. Actually, it's 51 points on the season. They are really, really good defensively. Offensively, leaves some things to desired. And one thing that you won't see as you look on Max Preps, they played the kickoff classic against Heritage, and it was 22-2 Heritage. Their offense can struggle. The Sebastian River game, they played Sebastian River, and it's 40-14. But that's a bit of a misnomer. That was a really tight game in the 4th quarter before they broke it open. So for Rockledge, do not turn the ball over. That is the big thing. You can't do the penalties. You can't do the turnovers. Those are the 2 things. If you tell Jensen Beach to go 80 yards on the Rockledge defense, they're going to have a really tough time doing it. Conversely, Rockledge is probably going to find some tough sledding on the Jensen Beach defense as well. So it's going to be a field position game. Somebody's going to make a kicking game error or something like that. I do think Rockledge is the more talented team. They're obviously the more battle-tested team. The question is, how much in years past there has unquestionably been residuals from the Cocoa game in the first round of the playoffs. They have a history of, and we saw it last year, right? The Satellite game, they sleptwalked through that Satellite game. And I don't want to take away anything from Satellite, but
And it could have beaten
they had
Mainland
injury.
too. Oh yeah, no,
Yeah, they should have beaten Mainland as well.
Right, right.
Now, so I think Rockledge will go
Yeah,
down there and win the game. I don't think it'll be a high score. I think that Rockledge will win 13-3, something like that. It will not be pretty. It will be a quick game, but Rockledge will take it as long as
right.
they keep their wits about them. Would not surprise me if Jensen Beach won, but I do think Rockledge gets the win there. I think either team is going to have a problem in the next round
Yeah, I
against
think
Mainland.
yeah. I one thing, and I've got their schedules. Let me see if I got right. One thing that because Rockledge, as you and I know, have been predominantly a run team last few years as far as offense. You know,
They
I'm
came out
not
throwing like
sure if
crazy against Cocoa.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that when I saw they had two games in a row. And first of all, let me go to young man Hayward that flipped from Georgia. Again, we haven't signed anything yet, but he's
Yeah,
committing. He's one of two that from Rockledge going to UCF. Let me tell you, Gus is probably Malzahn is probably looking at him going thinking of Travis Hunter. I mean, this young man is a phenom in the defensive backfield, but his run game or his passing, he is as explosive on offense. But yeah, I'm like you. Let me go back here. I think it was maybe Satellite and Merritt Island, back-to-back wins, and in both games they threw for 4 touchdowns, and I'm like, what? So now O'Galley, not so much. They lost by 3, but if they can put on some type of a passing game to go along with that run game, because I think in the past, and again, my son went to Rockledge. I love Rockledge.
I'm a Rockledge graduate.
I don't
Let's just
care
be honest. I want them to win.
exactly. Yeah, and I don't care who you are. If you get behind early, you got to have a passing game to catch. But there's not too many teams, unless you go back to Oklahoma running the wishbone, that a team is going to come from behind by 2 touchdowns with the run game. So I was excited to see that Green had back-to-back games where he threw for 4 touchdowns. And if they can put
Yeah.
something like that together with their run game, yeah, you know what? Who knows? Maybe if they go up to whoever wins against Satellite in Mainland, they might have an opportunity. So I'm like you. When I saw that strength of schedule, but again, they are 9-1, and you know what? And not to switch to college, and we'll move on to our last matchup, O'Galley, Merritt Island. But a lot of people are, well, Michigan, they haven't played anybody. Yeah, but you know what? They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're beating everybody. For the most part, they're beating them, real well. And not Treasure Coast. Jensen Beach could be the same way. Yes, they played but they've looked good. And so is it the team that looks good, or is it the competition they had? I guess we'll know this Friday. But I'm like you. I give Rockledge. So the last game we're going to talk about, and I hate when it's the first round. This is our second game. We've got Titusville and Palm Bay. So we know where at least 2 teams are going to be knocked out in the first round. We got O'Galley hosting Merritt Island. I think I wrote the date here, September 29th. O'Galley won at Merritt Island 12-11. I think it's going to be a good matchup. You see anything that you're looking at that might promote one over the other?
I think if I was O'Galley, I would have hoped maybe for either Satellite or perhaps Westwood is definitely the team I would have wanted. But
Yeah, right.
you when you have as good a year as they have had, you would
Right.
prefer to not get in the first round a team that you beat 12-11 in a game that could have went either direction.
Right.
O'Galley by their very nature, you're thinking, what do you think when you think O'Galley? You think defense.
Oh
And
yeah.
so right away, you got to think that might be a low scoring contest.
Right.
Merritt Island, we've gotten to the point pretty much a perennial playoff team.
Yeah.
A little bit of I don't want to say a head scratcher because they're a good team, but coming
Right.
in off the loss to Eustis,
Yeah.
I think that's not the best way to come in. You wonder,
Right.
had they won, would they be going to Sebring instead of O'Galley, perhaps? But we don't know with the magic formula. It's a hidden thing. My thing, if O'Galley, make them drive. It's not that dissimilar to what I just said about Rockledge and Jensen Beach. When you have a defense that good, don't give Merritt Island a short field. Make them drive the length of the field, and generally good things are going to happen. So I think that's the key. Can Merritt Island win the game? Yeah, they can absolutely win the game.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I think, as much as I champion Heritage Vero Beach as our most intriguing game, I think this one's right up there with this one and Palm Bay and Titusville as well. So a really interesting matchup. The good news, we're kind of turning this into a little bit of, the Treasure Coast area football isn't that good-a-thon, but Sebring is beatable in that next round as you go down. And Sebring is not on the Treasure Coast. So let's give them that.
Yeah, they're in the middle of nowhere, actually.
I would also say, by the way, since we don't want to just bash one area, the area that Cocoa is going to play, the Eustis, Denellen, South Sumter, they've all been here and they've all gotten crushed. That's routine. That area, that northwest of Orlando area. So I think that's what will happen again. Don't want to spoil anybody.
Yeah, they were ranked number 1, I think, for a while. I was looking at the schedules on Max Preps, and again, I love Coach Sands. I've met him several times. I don't know if I've met Coach Murray. He was the offensive coordinator when Coach Brown left, and now we're glad that he's back at Holy Trinity. And Coach Murray, Tyler, he's done a great job. When I look at O'Galley, so Galley, and I was at the Cocoa game. They played well. They lost 28-7, played a good game. I think them and Rockledge actually played the best out of everybody that played Cocoa. But O'Galley is coming in with 5 wins in a row since that loss. Merritt Island won their first 4. They're coming in with a 2-4 record from their last 6. So, we are dealing with high school kids, young men. They beat Satellite by 10, lost to Rockledge more than what I thought they would by 20. Beat Bayside, lost 1 point. Heritage 36-9. So, O'Galley's riding that. I still can't believe first district championship in history. That just boggles my mind because they've had some good teams over the years. But if you're looking at, if we didn't know either team and you're looking at how they're coming in, O'Galley's coming in pretty hot. But like I said, and you said the same thing, O'Galley's ranked 3rd in the class. And Merritt Island is down to 26. O'Galley's actually ranked 17th in the state. So hats off to Coach Sands and O'Galley. I think on paper they should win this game. But you're right. Merritt Island is Merritt Island. They are the Mustangs. They're going to have a good crowd. But what I like when I look at Satellite at the top, Rockledge, we got a real good chance of having somebody making that round 3. And if they have to meet Mainland, if it ends up being that way, though we got 2 Brevard County teams, you know what? We might have a team in the semis out of those 4, but
be interesting. It's felt like kind of an O'Galley fairy tale year. And so you might fancy them to get up there. At the same time, I wouldn't blink if you told me Merritt Island beats O'Galley Friday night. I really wouldn't.
Right. No, I agree.
A bit of a, would they feel more comfortable if they saw another team there? I like I said, I think they would really do Westwood. Right. And I see your banner on the ground. So
So what do you think? We got 10 teams. I think we agree. Cocoa. We expect them to.
I think the only question with Cocoa is, will the clock run every game? And I think it will.
Yeah.
But I thought that last year and it didn't happen. But I just don't see. I think this is as good as Cocoa was last year. I think this is a noticeably better team. I think there's a chance this is the best team ever in Brevard County, as hard as it is to compare eras.
I know. Yeah.
But as long as I've been living here,
right,
I think it's possibly the best team. The shame of it is 10, 20 years from now, when you look at the record for Cocoa, you're not going to remember that one loss was really suspect. So that's a shame, but we've never had a team that goes out and plays this schedule and not only wins, but just we talked about how good Treasure Coast, just making them look foolish.
Oh my gosh. Oof.
So Rockledge is a good team. Game was over in the first quarter, and we think Rockledge played a pretty good game and lost 26-0.
And I was there. They played a decent game. I'm like you. I think this could be the best team. And you're right. We go back to the 70s with Merritt Island, the 80s with Titusville back to back.
Some of the Chuck Wood Wing T teams, the 01, the 02 back to back.
Right. Palm Bay
championship teams.
Right.
It's very difficult.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. You can't, bring him back or anything like that. But it's just the way it works out. But they're certainly in the conversation at a bare minimum. And I do expect them. It's really weird because this feels like, and I hope I'm not jinxing them or anything like that. This feels like a series of exhibition games after their hardest games.
Yeah.
Maybe Titusville Titusville held them down for half.
Yeah. And again, and like you said, that's a tough part when we're talking about high school. When you're talking about college or especially pros, no disrespect intended towards anybody. Coach Holmes did a great job. Coach Burke. Again, anything can happen. On paper, Coco's the best. Still got to play the game. No disrespect to those two teams.
Injuries happen.
Yeah. I think Coco. I think if I'm going to pick another team, I might go with the MCC Holy Trinity winner. If they do indeed play each other again, I think they might have a pretty good path to the final. I haven't looked at the other side. But I think out of all of and again, I know we've got, 14. I think O'Galley's got, a pretty good, but again, you got Mainland up there that you're looking at.
I fear for our teams against Mainland. I'm not saying they're completely unbeatable.
Oh, no. But I think
they're a favorite.
As far as a path to Tallahassee, winning it or not, I think MCC Holy Trinity winner from that side of the bracket to get to the finals got a because like I said, I think
I don't hate Heritage, but Heritage has a tough road.
Oh yeah. 4S. That's and again, you're right. I'm not saying none of the other teams can win, but who's got the best path when we see the roadblocks in front?
I would say goes Coco, and then I would say maybe O'Galley. Although it's a little apples and oranges because MCC and Holy Trinity have one less game, and then you're thinking MCC's first game is probably going to be a bye, so we're looking at, MCC already getting to the regional final before really having to do anything.
Yeah, right. So if they play each other like we think they will, the winner is in the regional state semifinal.
Somebody's
if
going
they
to the
get
Final
past
Four.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, and then I haven't really looked at North Florida Christian and
I can't profess to be an expert on, North Florida
I'm not
Christian.
not a 1S.
Although they are tradition rich. They are a tradition rich.
Yeah,
school,
they are.
But
Yeah.
So
I'm
it'll
like
be very
you.
interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let me take this screen off here real quick. So definitely, when is the next edition of your paper come out?
We come out every Friday in print.
Okay.
Some people it comes out Thursdays online, and it comes out. So what you do is I hope anyway that there's maybe a couple people out there who do it, but I write the previews for every game, and you see I've written the previews already for all these games in Hometown News. So you have it Friday right before you go out to your game in theory anyway, and I can't guarantee it yet, but I think I'll be. It looks like I might be matriculating over to the Heritage of Vero Beach game on Friday night because that sort of does the two papers. So we have a fun clash of counties there as the lone team in the FHSAA playoffs the lone team that can be in the playoffs from Indian River County. Actually, I shouldn't say that. There's one other, but Vero Beach is the only one in the Masters Academy is undefeated. Do want to say one thing before we wrap this up. Merritt Island Christian, good job. They're still kicking. They won 24-22 last week, and they have I want to say it's Hernando Christian Academy this week. They lost, but they were competitive with them a few weeks ago. So if they win, then they advance. So let's go Cougars.
Well, and you know what? While we're on it, let's look at the Sunshine State Athletic Association. Cocoa Beach lost their and what I like about that is everybody makes the playoffs, and it prolongs the season because I think they only played like 8 games during the regular season. And I love Coach Waldrop announced a few games. Doug and I live streamed their first game this year. He just does a great job. And again, the excitement in the stands. It's just senior night was really special. But anyway, they go up to Jacksonville. They lose to Stanton. But they have like a consolation game. They come back. They play another, I think it was Interlochen, and they win. So again, their seniors go out on a high note. We were talking before we came on. The Vipers of Space Coast sitting there at 0-8. They're in another section of that playoffs in the SSAC, as is Sebastian River. And there's only 3 teams. Somehow they get a bye. I'm not sure how that was decided. So the team that won the other game, or the one game, won 50-0. And they played Space Coast, and Space Coast beat them. So hats off to Space Coast Vipers. They won one game, the last game of the season. They hoisted a trophy for that little 3-team district in that conference. And again, as you're building a program, that's a good way to end it going into spring, winter workout. So besides Merritt Island Christian, we certainly want to say kudos to Cocoa Beach and to the Vipers. So, well, again, I'm hoping, I don't want to say anything quite yet. Doug Cook and I are looking at possibly being at one of the games this weekend, not live streaming it, but doing some updates. But we got to check how the FHSAA rules. I think we'll be okay because we're not going to show any of the game. But so hopefully we'll be at one of the games as well. But Chris, as always, thanks for joining me on the Press Box. Hopefully, maybe we'll try to do this game next week. Hopefully, we'll have a lot of teams still left. We know a couple won't be.
I think we will.
And again, this Friday, Hometown News, catch his story. So thanks, Chris. We'll be talking to you soon, and hopefully I'll see you next week.
Take care.
All righty. So thanks for joining. That was Chris Bonanno. Again, catch him at the Hometown News. For Press Box Overtime, I'm Bill Maharis. Don't forget, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, join Doug Cook and I as we go over college football. The top 6 hasn't changed. We'll talk a little bit about Florida. Where are they headed now? Florida State's looking good. USF, I think, has won 4 or 5 games. UCF, the first conference win. Miami, maybe they ought to play the Gators in a non-bowl game. I don't know. But for Chris Bonanno, I'm Bill Maharis. We're Press Box Overtime. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you tomorrow night right here at 7 o'clock.